What's happening, fam? John here from AF Anime, back again with another One Piece related video, and I think since we're on break this week with the manga, it's a good time for me to talk about the upcoming project that Netflix has undertaken, the One Piece live action series. Now, we do have some news and information about the series, like the actors playing the main cast of Straw Hats, at least for season 1. Also, there is a list of this season on IMDb and making the rounds on Reddit that I'll be discussing in this video as well. Now, in general, I have my own thoughts about how successful this series may or may not be, but first I want to talk about why this series needs to be successful for the future of anime and manga live adaptations. Now, if you're new to this channel, go ahead and subscribe for more anime and manga related content, but I did just recently do a video talking about Netflix and the 9+ series or movies that they signed up to do in terms of live action anime adaptation. The link to that video should be somewhere on your screen now, but the reason why I'm doing this video is because the importance of One Piece in comparison to all the other projects is undoubtedly greater. Netflix can afford to use Cowboy Bebop and almost all of the other shows and movies that they're in the process of working on in terms of live action, if it means learning things that can make One Piece successful. And in my honest opinion, it will set the ground for the future of live action adaptation. Don't get me wrong, I don't think it's even remotely possible for this series to suck as hard as Dragon Ball Evolution did. That being said, if Netflix actually manages to make this series endearing to its original fan base, as well as entertaining to random people who just decide to click on a series that looks interesting, that could really set the pace for a lot of companies, not just Netflix, but Disney, Hulu, and whoever, to actually invest time and energy into making anime and manga adaptations that are as good or nearly as good as the original source material. And honestly, I gotta say that off the bat, Netflix is doing an amazing job so far from what I can see. Now, I gotta say that Netflix seems to be walking in the right direction when it comes to taking their time and paying attention to what they're doing and making this series. Namely, the first example would be the casting. Now, I know Ichiro Oda made this pretty easy for them, as in an SBS, he answered a fan's question about the ethnicity or the nationalities of some of his Straw Hat Pirates, or if not all of his Straw Hat Pirates at that time, and he gave it out and they seem to have stuck to that list very closely. Now, I don't know if Oda himself gave them this idea, but it's already an example of them doing their research and consulting the author's thoughts and opinions before moving forward with the project and the characters that he's created and loved. And since we're on the topic of Netflix's brilliant casting choices, I think the fact that they chose relatively unknown actors is an amazing idea. Now, when it comes to A-list actors, I think a lot of us have preconceived notions about how these actors act or how they portray themselves, or the fact that we've seen them in other roles playing other fictional characters might serve as a reason to drag us out of the reality that is supposed to be One Piece. So to wrap up this long intro, from what I am seeing, so far so good. I am incredibly optimistic, but going forward with this video, I think there are a few things or a few ways that Netflix could go horribly awry when it comes to making this series. And the first potential pitfall that I want to talk about is season 1, or at the very least, the potentially canon list of episodes that we've gotten released on IMDb and has been circulating on Reddit. Now, the nearly complete list of season 1 from IMDb should be on your screen at this moment, and from what we can tell, or One Piece fans can tell, it looks like the first season is going to encompass chapters 1 through 100 within 10 episodes. Now, this for me is not quite a red flag, but at the very least is going to be a yellow flag. I'll explain why. In the previous video where I talked about Netflix's upcoming adaptations, I stressed the importance of time management. When it comes to manga and anime, especially manga, a lot of us readers have gotten a good amount of time, a week-to-week basis, to see new bits, new pieces, and newly introduced characters really have a good amount of time to kind of grow on the reader. And that's not just the Straw Hats, we also have the villains who kind of take that role up as well. For example, when I look at the episode list, I don't see any indication that Buggy will be present, and Buggy is a very important character within the world of One Piece. Normally, his lack of inclusion in season 1 would set off a red flag for me, but I do think that it's manageable if they manage to make season 1 perfect in terms of having us come to know, like, and root for the Straw Hat crew appropriately. So to sum that up, you can rush the first 100 chapters into 10 episodes and get all the way from the beginning of Romance Dawn to the Grand Line within 10 episodes. That's doable. You just have to really sell us on these Straw Hat Pirates. Make this a hook that we can't get free from. And the next point that I want to talk about very briefly is the actors and the roles that they're taking on. Now, personally, I do think that the casting choices were brilliant, but I have to say from my past experiences with live action anime, it's important to do your thorough research. And I don't mean just go back and watch some episodes, tune into Adult Swim once a weekend or so. I mean, go back, separate yourself from any distractions and watch the original Japanese audio with subtitles, so that way you can get a better understanding of what the author meant or what he intended when creating these characters. And I understand a lot of artists and a lot of actors want to put their own creative spin on something, which might be necessary to some extent to take these Japanese archetypes and turn them into Western type characters. One trick to keeping the core fan base tuned into your live action adaptation is to nail these characters properly. And as I've said in my last video, character portrayal is incredibly important. The list of the 5 best adaptations so far had 4 Japanese production studios with 4 Japanese casts. That is a clear indicator that these Japanese actors do a better job portraying these characters in the light that they're supposed to be portrayed in. One actor in particular for this series that I think might have a tough time at this would be Taz Skylar. He is playing Sanji, and Sanji is a character who is funny in the manga, hilarious in the anime, but serious when he needs to be. This works when it comes to Japanese archetypes, but when it comes to a Western actor kind of getting this down, it might be very difficult and maybe very challenging for an actor to nail this role properly. Now, I have high hopes for all of these actors, but if I had one piece of advice for them, it would be to go back and watch the original Japanese audio with subtitles. You'll get a better feel for what these characters are and what their personalities are. Now, moving on to my next point that would help make this series successful, you have to make the villains and side characters who are important be important. And when I say this, I mean characters like Kobe, Buggy, Morgan, Shanks, Mihawk, and the Marines in general. You have to portray these characters properly. When it comes to the first 100 chapters of One Piece, one thing that I found amazing was the variety of types of Marines that we got to see. We have Axe-Hand Morgan, who is the first villain of the series. We get to see that he is kind of a evil person in a righteous job. And then we see Kobe, who is a good person who wants that righteous job. Now, Morgan does not have much character depth, nor does he have a great effect on the overall story of One Piece. However, Kobe is important in the beginning and will become important at multiple points throughout the later story of One Piece. And this is going to be the same for Shanks, Buggy, and Mihawk. These are 3 characters who will be big players at different points throughout this series. Now, it's not to say that they need a boatload of screen time to take away from our main cast, but they do need adequate representation and possibly even really good casting. And naturally, that actually brings me to my next point, which could make this series incredibly successful, and that is going to be cherry picking very carefully how you introduce A-list actors, if at all, in this series. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that A-list actors are required to make this series good, but I do see the value in using them every so often. And with One Piece, we have a really good potential route for them to take when it comes to using A-list actors to play characters like Shanks or Mihawk or other characters who have very rare appearances. Only do I think this is a good idea, but it's very financially profitable because you can only hire these characters for basically cameos, a couple scenes in one season. And if season 1 takes off well, you can have them sign contracts to make appearances, and it wouldn't take away from their busy and profitable careers, while at the same time you wouldn't need to hire them to be on set, constantly paying them millions and millions of dollars for a project they may or may not care about. Plus, I mean, if they spend too much time on screen, there could be a suspension of disbelief. Now, as I've said before, I haven't watched a lot of the live action adaptations as of recent, so when it comes to Cowboy Bebop, I haven't seen it, but I would imagine if I was watching it, it'd be hard for me to think that I wouldn't be thinking about Harold and Kumar go to White Castle seeing John Cho play the lead. So with that being said, if Netflix has any intention on name dropping and saying, hey, we have this huge A-list actor to be a part of our series, maybe it's best to do that within a limited capacity. 3 prime examples of this would be Shanks, Buggy, and Mihawk, as all 3 of those characters hardly have any appearance within the first 100 chapters, but when it comes around time like Marineford, they are incredibly important and incredibly relevant. Heck, it could even serve to amp up the hype for an event as big and as awesome as Marineford was. If we have the return of these major celebrities who've only had cameos within the first couple seasons, I think that could work out pretty well. So now that I've talked about the 3 points that have to do with the actors and the characters and their proper portrayals, the last suggestion that I have for One Piece to be successful is to double down if season 1 goes well. And what I mean to say by that is that if the first season goes well with the core audience or the original audience, as well as newcomers to the series, double down and start cranking out episode after episode, season after season, so that way you can keep this story ongoing for as long as possible. When it comes to One Piece, it's very long. A lot of these arcs last forever, and it's not to say that you need to spend a lot of time or multiple seasons in one event, but if you keep the story going, the bonds and the friendship between the main Straw Hat Pirates and their interactions with one another could be endearing and funny and serious enough to keep an audience engaged for multiple seasons to come. And it wouldn't just be the chemistry between the main Straw Hat actors, we also have a lot of villains who are very endearing to the audience, and some of which might even be more entertaining and more thoughtfully created than the actual Straw Hat Pirates themselves. Don Flamingo, for example, is an amazing character. He's well written and has a very creative background that is important to the story of One Piece. However, we won't reach Don Flamingo until right after the time skip. So with that being said, we have a lot to cover before we get there, and if One Piece were to get canceled before we can get to arcs like Dressrosa, Marineford, or Enies Lobby, that would be a great missed opportunity. I mean, when it comes to One Piece in particular, this live action series has a great potential for longevity if they just treat it like a locomotive that will just die if they let it lose steam. So to sum up my last piece of advice when it comes to One Piece live action and keeping it successful, if you have an audience who's stayed with you and is begging for more after season 1, crank out seasons 2 and 3. And if you have a captive audience or people who are staying with you for the ride, after season 2, if they're still with you, that'll give the writers a little more wiggle room in terms of fleshing out other characters, fleshing out other situations, or hitting some of these really remarkable scenes that get the One Piece fans up in their feels, or just want to hit the nostalgia bump for people who've been with the series for a long time. In any case, that's going to do it for the ramblings of this anime fan. I hope you guys understand the importance of the One Piece live action adaptation and its impending effect on the future of live action adaptation endeavors. So when it comes to Netflix and the 5 actors who are playing the East Blue Straw Hats, I wish you the best of luck, and I hope that you guys nail season 1 down hard. Can't wait to see what you guys are up to. Thank you very much for tuning in, for those of you who have made it all the way through this video. If you want to see more anime content like this, like, share, and subscribe. It would do me a great solid. Also, fire off in the comment section down below what you think of the information that we've gotten on season 1 so far. Also, let me know which big name actors you would like to see cameo or appear in One Piece, and which characters you think they should play. In any case, my name's John from AF Anime. Thank you guys very much again. I'll see you in the next video.